Welcome to the AI Silicon Valley podcast, where we cover all the topics related to AI, artificial intelligence. We're in the heart of Silicon Valley here in Palo Alto, California. This is podcast number 10. My name is Eric Nelson, and with me today, I have my co-host, Rajesh Kadam. Today is Saturday, January 18th, 2024. Rajesh, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, Eric. Thanks for asking. I have a little bit of a cough, so hopefully I won't irritate our viewers with that.
Well, I know we haven't been here for a while, so it's a new year. It's 2025, and we're going to cover all of the great announcements for 2025, as well as the big one that NVIDIA announced a new desktop supercomputer for your home use for under like 3K. What do they call that thing?
They call it Project Digits, I believe.
Digits.
Yeah.
Yeah, Linux-based full desktop computer, right? That under 3K that comes with the what is the chip?
The Grace Blackwell, I think
Blackwell.
GC, but I think GC10. But I think their latest current release, I think, is GB200s. But this is a GB10, I think. That's what I sort of read. But yeah, no,
so
I mean,
Maxwell
it's
GB10 good enough to run all the models. So for home and not made for your gaming GPU, right? For your basically PC for your AI model generation.
Correct. For AI model, sort of training, tuning, running inference a little bit, right? Testing models, etc.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
So we'll dig into that in the show today. So excited about that, as well as talk a little bit about the reality of AI, right? Some of the good, some of the bad. It's a new year. There's a lot of good, but there's a lot of fun of like what has worked great and what hasn't worked great. So we'll get into the what has worked great and what hasn't worked great. We'll push Rajesh around a little bit with regard to AI, and we should have some fun this year. So looking forward to it. So Rajesh, what's new in the news?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the NVIDIA announcing that particular supercomputer, what he's calling it on the desktop is probably
everybody's computer is a supercomputer now. Your phone is a supercomputer.
I know. Everything is a supercomputer these days, but I think NVIDIA is clearly the star at the moment, right? I believe he was on stage at CES for almost 2 hours, an hour and a half or 2 hours. So
is that where he did the announcement?
He did the announcement, and it was more like a la.
Did he hold it up and
Steve Jobs style? Just one more thing at the very end.
So, he didn't jump up and down going developers, did he? Right? Like who's that from Microsoft? I forget the guy.
No, you're not talking about Satya. No.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, I think so.
That's
Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer. Okay. Right. Yeah. So, that's a big one. Outside of that, in terms of folks catching up, doing some innovative work. I don't know about innovative work, but cutting edge work around AI. There's a model called DeepSeek that some Chinese researchers have announced. And it is outperforming or matching the benchmarks for OpenAI's Owen model. So, and I think, that's an interesting one as well. Sam Altman pushed back on that a little bit, I believe. I mean, he didn't directly reference it, but he said, hey, the innovation is the hard work, but once you figure it out, then, it's easier.
You can copy it. You can copy it and make it happy.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see where that lands, right?
Absolutely. And another related, I guess, China news, Alibaba cut prices on one of its models by 85%, I believe. Probably it was a vision model. So that's interesting as well. So probably I think the competition is heating up there in China. I'm assuming.
They're desperately going out of business. That's what I've heard about Alibaba.
Is that right?
They're struggling. Yeah. All the Chinese companies are struggling with what does it mean now, right? With the tariffs in place and that kind of thing. So when China says they're struggling or Alibaba says they're struggling, I'm like, they're not lowering their price because things are booming. They're lowering their price because they're trying to stay in business.
Stay in business. Yeah, interesting. I mean, that's. I think we are. We are just the weekend before the presidential inauguration.
Yes,
so
it's.
I think the next few months, even the next few weeks, probably are going to be super interesting. There's going to be.
And that was in the news as well, right? Like the new AI regulations.
That's right. So I mean, Biden in just the final days of his presidency has, I think, put in some new restrictions, controls for AI chip exports.
Right.
So I think it's basically again trying to make sure that chips don't land in the wrong hands. even via other countries. China buying it from other countries. So I think that's my kind of, I don't understand it deeply, but clearly
I don't know if I believe that or not. If we're just kibitzing about what's going on there, I think it's probably a protectionist strategy of, we want to keep our industry competitive, so let's not give China any good AI chips, right? Let's keep the AI chips in house so that we can. They say it's military and so forth, but I also think there's a little bit of protectionism going on there.
Yeah. I have to say that, these models are just getting smarter and smarter by the day. And just defense tech and how, the defense departments of different countries, how they're going to use this is going to be very, very real.
Well, didn't you read something about somebody hooking up an AI engine to a shooting range gun or something?
So there was this guy. It came on my LinkedIn feed. It's insane. But there was this video of this guy standing in a room, and he had mounted almost like a machine gun or something. I don't know, on a big heavy tripod, or a pillar. Yeah. And he was giving instructions via a headset like this, and asking it to shoot at 5-degree intervals, and so on and so forth. Oh my God!
This has been a known thing. Yeah, there's movies where the RoboCop movie where he's an automated RoboCop kind of guy, and he runs around shooting people. And there's always a little bit of circus fare around some of those use case models.
Right.
I'm sure the military are making bots that do that kind of stuff.
Of course.
I think we have to worry about that.
Yeah. I think drones and swarm of drones, etc. Drone warfare.
Modern warfare is going to be all drones and automated drones.
Yeah. My only concern, Eric, though, I think is, this is an example of, how some of this tech could be used for, could get in the wrong hands, being used for the wrong purposes, and so on. That's all I think, unfortunately, we have to sort of worry about and make sure that doesn't happen. That would be
that's true. I think we've learned, if nothing else, that borders aren't going to shift as much as we thought they were now, because the tech is so strong that no one country is going to have a really big advantage, right? Because the tech is going to be what's going to be driving warfare. So.
Yeah, and I think borders have gotten more and more porous, right? All of this is kind of available to everybody, so it's going to be interesting. So I think in other news, there's an AI chip startup / company out of the LA area, and they're doing a reverse SPAC and going public. So but this is kind of interesting. I don't know. They seem to be selling I couldn't get a good sense of what exactly they're selling, but it's some sort of hardware, some chips, but they're selling to end customers directly. They are not selling to other, manufacturers, unlike Broadcom or Nvidia, right? Who sell to, Apple or Google, etc. These guys are going directly to end users. Apparently, they have some deals in Middle East, etc. So anyway, this is an interesting one where a chip company going public. So just I think. What should I say? Harvesting the appetite that probably the market has for things like this. So
busy news, and it's 2025. Here we go.
Yeah, no, it's totally an exciting time. I think just talking about AI chips and quantum. I think Jensen Huang in his keynote at CES, he also slammed quantum computing, saying that it was 10-20 years away or something like that. So
I've never believed any of it's real. I think it's not.
I know he spoke about Willow.
Yeah, right. Right. I'm a good idea to start mentioning that was all financial hype, right? To get investment dollars. That I don't believe that quantum is demonstratable as a physics concept yet. Right? Quantum is small atoms, small parts of an atom. So the name quantum could mean anything, right? So it means very, very tiny behaviors of atoms at the particle level below, underneath the atom, right? Or underneath the nucleus, and the electron and the proton is looking at the components there, and then any behavior that those components have, or what they call quantum, right? And then if you say quantum computing and quantum entanglement, this is like a lot of guesswork.
Right.
And I don't think it's demonstratable.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of interesting. I don't know a ton about. I think at quantum, my understanding is the current latest and greatest in semiconductor chip development is about, I think 2 nanometer, right,
Right.
is kind of where it is right now, right? But my understanding with just GPUs, etc., they are nowhere near 2 nanometer. I think it's much sort of so there's still room, I think.
Oh yeah, sure.
For things to go before like kind of getting to quantum territory, I think. So
Cool.
anyway, I mean, bunch of news. So
All well,
maybe
let's try drill down a little bit about digits. AMD's desktop computer.
you mean
Nvidia's
Nvidia's this game?
AMD is another news article, but Nvidia and digits versus Jetson. So for me, I feel like they've been doing this for a while, right? Like if you knew about Jetson, Jetson was their previous version of a little compute unit that he would hold up, and I think it was $800, and there was a developer SDK for it that allowed you to build AI models and run those models, but it was targeted at the embedded robotics market, right? So if you wanted to build a smart robot that could visually see what was in the room, process the camera data, and then build models based on what it's seeing and recognize what's in the room, and then be the brain of the embedded robot, right? Then they had this little desktop unit that looked exactly like every other NUC x86 small compute desktop unit, right? But it was for $800, and it had NVIDIA's current AI chipset in it, and I don't know which one it was.
Yes.
So I feel like this is just a new version of this that still goes at the market, but I think what you were saying is it's targeting a different space.
I mean, I think this release, like this announcement, actually, in my opinion, kind of shows a company that's in transition, right? I think Nvidia, from what I can see, is that it's a semiconductor company, right?
Makes hardware.
Hardware, makes chips. Now it's trying to move up market, right? And capture, become more of have a software stack as well, right? Not just chips, right? So, and the way they are enabling that, like a wedge in the door, so to speak, is the supercomputer, right? Now, but the supercomputer is not targeted at folks who do robotics and edge computing, etc., which was what Jetson was all about, right? I think this piece of hardware, right, with a bunch of software on it, is really targeted at, researchers, AI researchers or engineers who want to deploy models, right, locally and try, because right now you need to do anything with any model. Basically, you have to go to a hyperscaler and try to do it. That's probably the easiest way to do it right now. So this probably dovetails with with Jetson's aspiration to become, potentially bring in a lot of cloud revenue as well, right? Which is what I think is what I've read, that they want to go up against AWS as well. So,
well, what a better way to deliver a payload than a piece of hardware, right? Like a physical thing that you can sell people, that then they can bring it in their home or bring it in their desk at work or whatever, and get access to I want to say Maxwell, but is it Maxwell?
No, it's Grace GB, Grace Blackwell, is the latest version that they have, which I believe is going to go into those supercomputers as well. GB10s, I believe, while the latest ones that go into data centers is GB200s, is my understanding.
Right, but still kind of like x86, right? You got a Celeron processor, or you got an i9 or whatever, or you got 164 core Intel. It's all about the compatible architecture, right? Because if you're running the software and you're building the models, whether it builds the model in 3 days or 1 day or 2 hours, or you scale up to X number of, flops or whatever we're counting, that's not as important for me wanting a $3,000 PC as much as I got the GPU that is compatible so that I can run it.
Yes. See, I think
so. 10 versus 200, really don't care.
Right. 10 versus 200. Yeah, absolutely right. Because I think just having captive hardware where I can run my models is a big deal.
Right.
I was running some inference workloads just a couple of days ago, and it's insane. The amount of pricing is really crazy. Even to test the models in the playground, is like $25 an hour.
Yeah,
right?
It's like you could hire a contractor for that, right?
And
have them do some work.
Yeah, so these chips are in short supply, and where this deployment is done is all currently expensive. So point is, I think there might be uptake for this particular product. So it's going to be interesting, and it'll allow them to build a whole sort of software layer around all these models, just like a big model catalog, which I think has value, right? Like as the open source movement just around LLMs continues to accelerate, right?
Well,
I think both Hugging Face and
for me also, there's an
Nightshade.
ego thing in it. Everybody wants to be a computer company, right? Yeah. Everybody
Interesting.
wants to make a computer and sell a computer and be the
Really?
next
Really?
Steve
Okay.
Jobs and stand up on stage. And one more thing, I've got a new piece of hardware. Right? I got a computer for the masses. Right? I'm going to change the masses. So
Interesting.
there's a little bit of fun in that.
Right.
I'm
Probably.
sure.
I mean, I
looked at Jetson and they discontinued Jetson, and I'm like, okay,
right.
this did not make them a ton of money. This was just something cool for them to be in.
Yeah, no, I think based on what I have seen, right, like on my feeds, they seem to have a very strong handle on the robotics side. Like they have SDKs, and so if you are a robotics player, right, so they continue to innovate in that space.
I
clearly.
almost bought one because when I was reading about it, I'm like, oh, this is fun. I could go do some model generation using their GPUs.
Right.
Then I realized the Jetson was discontinued, and then I learned why.
Right.
Because they've come out with
so this probably will have multiple SDKs, who knows, right? Like but like more traditional SDK for your average engineer developing SaaS software, right? I think would be a very solid use case, right? So
especially if you got a handful of developers, you give them each one, and then they can go off and build models and test models and spend time writing code. Right?
Yes, and all of this is
not consuming valuable cloud resources at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if it's easy to get, etc., it's fine, right? I mean, anyway, this is NVIDIA's.
You know what? I'm an anti-cloud person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not a big. I've never liked a cloud. I'm not a cloud guy. I'm an IT guy. Right? I'm a data center guy. I like hardware. I build hardware. I use OrCAD. I design circuit boards. I geek out on the hardware along with software and kernels and Linux and everything else, right? I've compiled kernels. I've done a lot of engineering, and for me, cloud is like the antichrist. Right? Like it's like I hate that because it's like, wait, you're just saying forget it. You don't have to worry ever about hardware. Oh, and by the way, we're going to charge you a lot of money to just use something that I would like to sit up and grind on myself, and it costs me nothing, or it costs me the power bill. Right. And then I get heat from that, so I get to heat my house. All my friends would always heat their Wisconsin house with their hardware. So I like that. Logically, people have been pushing back from the cloud. There has cloud computers here to stay. There's no question about that, right? But a lot of people have been pushing back on cloud, right? And migrating workloads back into the data center because it's expensive.
Yes.
They can't run it any cheaper than I can run it. So then all of a sudden they're charging me for their administrators and their big semi trucks that are driving racks of machines in and out. It's like, wait, I just want to buy a $3,000 thing, sit it under the desk. We ran communities on a server under our desk at VMware for the first 5 years. It was just a machine under somebody's desk, right?
Wow.
Connected it to the net, and away we went, right?
Wow.
All of a sudden it got more expensive and it's like, okay, so so I can see where in AI land, yes, you can have AWS and you can put up big dollars and get GPUs. Yeah. But it'd be nice just to have a $3,000 thing that you buy once,
sitting,
and then put your engineers on it.
Yeah. And I think at that price point, it's kind of interesting, right? At that price point, it's appealing to somebody who knows they're going to like run some workloads now for a extended period of time. Otherwise, a $3,000 investment is not going to make sense, right? I mean, if I go to a cloud hyperscaler where I spend $500 and do some testing, which is probably where things are going to go as you move along, right? So I think clearly, I mean, you come from the world where you say, hey, don't abstract out things for me. I like to kind of build that whole stack and own it and see it and so on and so forth. And then there's the kind of group of people where the abstraction, like makes life easier for them. So that is super interesting. And I think, at a broader level, I think AI compute demand is going to continue to increase. So it's very simple, right? Like the compute is going to continue to increase. So I think the hyperscalers are going to continue to make money, and so will, I think there's probably a place for a piece of hardware like this as well, right?
Yeah, I agree. That.
So
and it's a maturity level too. I'm always hacking on new stuff, and so sometimes you just can't afford to be paying the big dollars for enterprise cloud offerings versus just being able to buy something and then use it for a while. Right? And then throw it away when you're done because your stuff never worked. Right? Like
Right.
level of investment. I'm not a startup with $25 million. I want to buy one for $3,000 and play with it.
Right.
And
Right.
see how it works and learn it and kick the tires. Right?
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I might buy one myself. We'll see.
Yeah. You'll see. So that's Jetson versus Digits, and the NVIDIA announcements, which is cool.
Yes.
One of the things that I ran into, and then we talked about, the reality of AI is that I've been doing training over the holidays. We got 3 weeks off here as we come back to the new year now, and it's the middle of January, and we're all back in it.
Right.
And I spent my time learning, networking, right? Virtual networking, right? And so. And I had to do training and I had to pass tests at the end of each training session. And they were challenging, but you could take the test as many times as you want. I'm like, I'll just use ChatGPT and I'll just put in the questions and see if I can get some pointers on, because, it was self-learning. You got to take it and learn it. And they didn't care how you learned it, but you had to learn it. So I just did for fun. I did exercise and I put in the... And ChatGPT gave me amazing answers. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Like these answers are spot on, right? They made total sense. And so did a question and then analyzed the question and gave me the right answer. Here's the answer. A is the right answer because gave me 6 reasons why that was the right answer, and then showed me B, C, and D and why those answers didn't make sense and were confusing. And so I'm like, oh great. So I went and I ran. There were 20 questions on this one module, and I took all the 20 questions, ran them to ChatGPT, got all the answers. You want to guess what my percentage correct was? On the 20 questions,
knowing hallucination,
50,
probably
50%.
Oh my God,
50%.
Wow.
50% were dead wrong, right?
Wow.
And later I went and studied the material and answered the questions properly. And it was just dead wrong. It was dead wrong. And that's one of these things where you go like, okay, how much of this? Who's actually looking at these models to say like, we talked earlier on a podcast, I think it was podcast 1 or 2, we talked about always investigating. AI stands for always investigating.
Right.
And so as we go into 2025, I think there's some honorable mentions of places where AI didn't do well, right? Yes. Like I forget who came out with an article.
CIO magazine.
Yeah, CIO magazine came out with an article.
I think over the
10 failures of AI. Right, in 2024, right, and we always do these who died in 2024 at the end of the year. They do these memorial speeches. I want to feel like McDonald's had to give up on AI because they were trying to do AI ordering and
something went wrong.
It went wrong, and customers were complaining, and it didn't work. And they listed these 10 failure modes of AI. Right. And so I got to ask you, what's the deal?
Look, I think hallucination is definitely a reality, right? Like what you mentioned about.
They mentioned AI hallucination.
Yeah, right? Your experience, personal experience, right? Is not uncommon at all. It seems to come up with such uncanny, convincing answers that turn out to be wrong. It's like, oh my God, how did this even, kind of thing happen, right? I think we didn't cover it in one of our previous episodes, but like when Notebook LM came out, Eric, there was this spoop fart thing where somebody fed just 2 sheets or 1 sheet where all the writing was poop fart, and there's a whole 30-minute podcast that Notebook LM was able to generate around this. Like nothing. There's nothing in the document. So it's insane what these models are now able to kind of conjure and come up with. So where it doesn't know the answer, it has a real strong tendency to
make an answer.
To make it up.
Yeah.
That
was my experience with the test.
Yes.
It was completely convincing that this was absolutely the right answer, and here's why. And it was just not.
So one sort of suggestion.
One of the reasons was, I'll just give you a quick defense of the AI, was that it was always like a year off. It might have been the right answer 2 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
But products changed.
Oh,
right? Networking has changed.
I see.
And some of the answers just were no longer relevant.
So
those were issues that like, we wouldn't do this 2 years ago. But the test was asking me what's new in version 4.0.1 and things that it wouldn't do before, all of a sudden it can do. And the right answer was, these are the things it could do this, right? And you're like, oh, it can do RAID 5, or whatever, right? And you're like,
Gotcha.
so there's a time element to AI and how
No, so
current
that time
models
element, now
are.
that you
Right.
mentioned this, I mean, I think one explanation could be that, I mean, all of these models, ChatGPT including, are all trained on past data. I mean, they clearly don't have access to real, well, I mean, ChatGPT now does, I guess, right? But there's a heavy indexing of learning based on past material, right, which it has learned from the web. So if the answer it gave could probably have been correct 2 years ago but not today, then it's, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't call it hallucination, maybe it's just like training data, right? And its inference, that it's the conclusion it's coming to is based on the data it has. So it's quite possible. I mean, that's the way I would sort of put it. But referring to the things from CIO magazine and so on, I think the stuff that we have seen, like with Alaska Airlines, I don't know, was that 2024 or 2023, but with the chatbot, like
Yeah, missed the discount period for
something like that, right? Like,
yeah.
I think those kind of things. I mean, the models just have gotten smarter and smarter, right, over time. So I think we have
Well,
to.
we've talked about this one. ChatGPT hallucinates court cases, right? You're like, worst
yes.
lawyer ever, right? Like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, I think definitely there's hallucination, and I think one on the ground sort of way to combat this that I've seen people do with prompts is you just say, hey, don't make stuff up, right?
Oh,
And yeah,
right,
don't make stuff
right,
up.
right.
Please, my job depends on this, so do not give me wrong answers or something like that, right? Like, so if you don't know it, say you don't know, right? Like things like that. So I think that's the way to combat it currently. But I I mean, I'm definitely an AI optimist by all means, and I mean, what I'm seeing with just even the O1 reasoning models, etc., just the ability to think through things and come up with a plan is exceptional, really. It's just a question of you have to verify that what it's telling you is correct, right, and it meets what you need. So ability to think, plan, reason is something that we are going to see a lot more of in 2025. And in fact, maybe we didn't cover this in the news, but now one of the things OpenAI just released yesterday or day before, is around the ability to schedule things in ChatGPT, like recurring appointments and calendaring and to do tasks and things like that. Now that's kind of again, I wouldn't call it, maybe it's a Trojan horse, you could call it, right? But it's really the first foray into agents for ChatGPT, right? Ability for the system to actually give suggestions on its own to the user, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today, when you go to ChatGPT, almost always you start the conversation. But imagine situations where ChatGPT is telling you things, hey, you should be taking care of X, Y, Z, or you have an appointment that, so on and so forth. That's kind of agentic workflows in motion now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's new, and we're going to see a lot more of that in 2025 for sure. So notwithstanding that CIO magazine article,
in defense against AI, there was certainly a certain amount of news flare that came with this article, right? Like if you read through all the examples, like they had to reach back to 2018
to
get some of these failures, right? And for 12 failures that they do find, there are tons of failures that it's doing a good job, right? And it got the bereavement airline fare policy for applying for your discount wrong. Okay, but that's like I'm sure it recommends 1,000 flights a day that are perfectly right and perfectly good. But the one that makes the news article in the CIO is the one where somebody got a $200 court judgment because the AI gave them the wrong price. It's like, okay,
that's just newsworthy stuff, right? But I think I think it's fair to say that you still have to exercise the human in the loop. I think is certainly still needed, no doubt about it, right? And will continue to probably be needed as we move along, right? But until we gain confidence over time, I mean, honestly, like with the work we are doing at PipeIQ also, like, I mean, I think the kind of output that I'm seeing with some of this stuff, I am increasingly, there's greater degree of confidence. It's just like, okay, hey, I mean, if I'm like 19 out of 100, if I see everything correct, it makes me just kind of rely on the system more. That's just the fact of the matter. So a lot of it is to do with, again, fine-tuning what you're doing with those models.
I think that companies still have to be careful when they're rolling it out and choose where to apply. But I still think right now there's just still a lot of capital going into, build the models, and they haven't gotten to the point where they, are
Guardrails.
actually rolling the models out into production. And some of these failure modes are just because they got ahead of themselves, got the model going because it was exciting, and then the next thing you know, they're discovering that nobody really tested these models.
Right.
And then that's the other thing that I've seen is that with the AI confidence, they're almost skipping good development procedures. Like developers usually used to write alpha code and then, get code reviews with peer code reviews. Then you do beta, then you have beta programs with beta customers. And then a year later you come out.
Right.
There's two things. SaaS has accelerated that. So all of a sudden SaaS is just in time coding, right? Like where you're just writing code, pushing it to customers. And now add in AI and AI principles to that, where you just want to get your AI out there, right? There's a land grab of how quickly can get your features out and make news that you've got AI doing this for you.
I mean, I think AI is undoubtedly accelerating all of this development, right? Just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a VC, well-known, sort of tier one VC, and she was telling me how, she's seeing deals, right? Teams, just teams of 3 people doing multi-million dollars in revenue, right? Like startups. So they are able to do that so much just because of AI, right? Yeah. It's all of this code generation that's happening, right? Also, of course, brings with it the whole risk of, is there?
But I wouldn't want to be a developer right now. I really wouldn't want to be a guy that's coding, right? Or a person.
Yeah.
Just because I think it is scary that how much code you can get out of a small team now, right? That AI is going to generate code. Right. And all the programmers were running through college, right, will come out, and some of them will be AI coders. That's fine because somebody has to build the AIs. Right. But it does scare me a little bit on, how easy it is to use AI to generate regular code.
Right. I think that whole code generation, building apps, right. Feeding a UI UX to an app and it's just generating everything. I think all of that is going to, dramatically accelerate, I think.
Not to change subject too much, but just throw in, we haven't mentioned Elon Musk since at least 3 weeks ago on the last podcast. But they pushed the new administration to open up the immigration for coders again. Right?
I see. I've not been following the news.
So there must be still kind of a shortage, or there must be a need for additional people, because they definitely. The Elon and Vivek or whatever his Vivek, also was pushing for bringing more coders in. So maybe it's going to change what they're building. Maybe they're building AI engines now, right? But they're still looking for more people.
I mean, I clearly with AI you're going to be able to do more, right? I think one outstanding question, to be honest, Eric, is how much of the employment contraction we are seeing currently is attributable to AI? That's not very clear, right? Honestly,
right. That's
like when Zuckerberg announces that he's going to lay off 5% of his workforce,
right.
Is that attributable to AI? We don't know.
What I've read is it's just cost of capital. It wasn't nothing to do with AI. It had everything to do with cost of capital and how many programmers you have and how much investment capital am I getting and how much return do I have to return,
right?
In order to,
of course, it's a stock market. Yes, of course, it's a stock play, but. I thought I saw just today like an article saying Mark Benioff is not going to hire any more engineers in 2025. That sounds a little bit over the top, but I think companies today.
Oh yeah, that's what I say. I would be worried right now if I were a coder looking for work. I'd be maybe thinking about working in marketing.
I don't know about that. Yeah. So I think we still need immigrant engineers, obviously. The country, so much of the startups and new talent here all is immigrant talent, really, right? A lot of it. So I think that is not something that you want to lose. But overall, if we look at software dev, then maybe, if you were to look at this in a more detailed fashion, like all the software coding development that happens today, a lot of it might just be maintenance mode kind of stuff. You're working for an insurance company in, Illinois, in Chicago, Illinois, and maybe the work you're doing is just QA, right? Yeah, QA work for that insurance company. Imagine, that's ripe for what could have been RPA, maybe.
Interesting. Interesting times. And so, getting back to the the idea that this stuff will get more reliable, right?
Right.
As the models get more mature, right?
Right.
Do you think it will get mature enough that they will be just rock solid, right? Like that I will be able to go to an AI and then not get 50% wrong on in questions.
Yeah, see, I think these Q&A, question and answer things are kind of interesting even for ChatGPT, meaning if you are the researcher building OpenAI models, if you're Sam Altman, one of the questions is, hey, should I be giving good answers to these questions that people copy paste, right? Like if I'm writing the GRE and I were to copy paste with keeping it ChatGPT open on the side, right? Like
could be
it could be, it could totally be intentional too, right? Like who knows, right? Like, I mean, we don't know. So that's what comes to mind.
Well, it's the current data. It's also because I'm learning about networking and the ISO network stack. There's layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, layer 5, layer 6. And you ask ChatGPT, explain the layers, and it gets a little confused on heavy technical topics, right? Especially in the data center. Like, how do I architect a data center that has it's it's
no,
older,
but that's
how do you keep the models? On that.
No, so Eric, I mean, that is a fantastic use case for RAG, actually, right? Like, meaning retrieval augmentation, meaning when we give model more data. Now, if you were to give Broadcom specific data, information about data centers, etc., which I'm sure Broadcom is probably developing, right? Like internal model that's completely trained on internal documentation information. That model is going to be phenomenally smarter, right? Compared to raw, quote unquote, raw ChatGPT in its baseline, because it just doesn't have all that data, right? I mean, some of the data that people quote is that 90% of all data in the world is behind enterprise firewalls. Is some crazy number, 90 or 80%. Right. And 90% of all data is unstructured, is another sort of number I've heard, right? So there's a bunch of unstructured data sitting behind enterprise firewalls. That's the kind of answer, structured and unstructured. And ChatGPT doesn't have access to that. It's very simple. The way Sam Altman can get access to that is by essentially doing, enterprise-specific offerings, right? So if Broadcom partners with OpenAI, he's gonna put something right within their cluster, right, sitting locally. God knows what, right? Like so, and the data is not used for training of the base model. So that would be my answer to that, right? Like, so there's going to be task specific models, and talking about level 1, like networking specific things, there'll be networking specific models that will be developed either by Broadcom or NVIDIA or internally or in the open source, right? That only cater to this specific use case, So that is the way I think this kind of field is going to develop to just get better and better. So to your question about are these things going to get rock solid? I think they're definitely going to get better and better by the day, right? One thing is very clear. It's all dependent on data. There's just no two ways about it. Nobody is contesting the fact that you need data. And of course, the fact that, hey, it's all been trained on all the internet's data has already been used. So we need synthetic data. So there's the whole thing about distillation and how do you bring in, synthetic data.
I got another question in this space, right? Like, we talk about this because we're building AI apps, right? Or at least PipeIQ is, right? And you are, and you spend time building SaaS applications around this, right? And you might be listening to this podcast and you're one of those SaaS AI developers, builders of that.
Right.
If you're using AI, right? Like, do you really even care?
You don't care at all.
You
That's
care
true.
that it's even AI generated. You just care that you've interacted with a website. It gave you the right answer.
That's correct.
Right. And you're not really.
That's true.
You don't really care that AI generated. I sometimes think that people are putting AI on their tagline. They're like, Avis is AI recommending your latest car purchase or your rental. And you're like, I don't really care how you recommend that I need to, that I like renting minivans versus Corvettes because I'm a family guy. But I think they're using it as a marketing engine, a marketing tool to say, look, we're better than enterprise budget or budget rental car. Hertz has a better AI, but I don't know if customers really care.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I think we should maybe parse the customers into two kinds, right? Like B2B, B2C kind of thing, situation. Sure, right. So if you are a employee at IBM and IBM uses an enterprise search engine, and let's just take Glean as an example, right? So if you use Glean Enterprise Search within IBM, and I'm searching for documents or information, now all of that model is going to be trained on all internal IBM data, right? and is likely to generate results that are hopefully high quality, right? That is trained on internal data, right? So that is one use case. Second use case, well, you're on kayak.com or whatever, right, or Hertz, and you're given a car recommendation, which is also potentially AI driven, right? Some sort of machine learning in the back end. There, I have no idea, right? Like, I mean, it's not like data specific or anything, right? Like, I'm a consumer. There the recommendation better be good, right? Like, I mean, doesn't matter what technology you use, who cares, right? So that is data independent, unless, of course, so here's the catch there, right? Like, what if you are a user on Hertz, you've been a Hertz customer for the last 5 years, and I know all your purchasing patterns, or I know that Eric is a family guy, he likes to rent,
minivans.
Right, minivans. He's done that last 3 times.
Right.
So this time, when I suggest his page should be full of minivans, maybe, right, or other family-friendly choices, right? So that is, again, banking on historical data, right, about that customer, about that particular person. So it's kind of in the same vein, right? But the way you would handle the data, of course, would be different.
Yeah, we a group of us talk tech sometimes together, and one of the guys in the group was wondering, like, we're noticing ads showing up, and the only way that ad could have showed up is if the phone was listening, right? Like,
oh
so
my
we
God,
did it, but you don't know where I'm going with this. So we did a test, and we said, okay, we're going to talk about thermoses for the next 3 days. When we're getting together, we're going to talk about thermoses, and then no one's going to search thermos on their browser. Right. No one's going to touch a keyboard. We're just going to see if audio-wise we ever saw any thermos ads show up, right? And the answer is no. We didn't get any thermos ads. So the phone was not listening. So either they're watching our mailbox, right? I know Google Gmail looks at every piece of and figures out what you're doing through mail, right? And so if you mention a thermos in your mail, you would then probably start seeing thermos. But what we didn't think about is AI's model, in AI's capable swaying that test, which is they might have figured out that we're all coffee drinkers, or they might figure out who we are demographically in our age, and then start making recommendations of and why did I even think of saying thermos? Well, I thought of thermos because I'm at the age where I'm worrying about coffee. It's winter, and I'm thinking about hot chocolate and keeping so I just pulled thermos out of my mind, use that as an example. But truth be told, if that AI was smart enough of who I was, it would know that I was going to use thermoses this part of my life, and thermos ads would start showing up, right? And so you don't know if it's actually listening or whether it's just figured out my purchase behavior, what my purchase behavior should be, given who I am and what I am, and and where I live and where I go and what I do, not what I said, or shared on an email to somebody else.
What you're saying is the AI may figure out that that conversation was fake.
Right. Oh, here's another thermos test.
Thermos test.
A bunch of guys drinking coffee thinking they're going to fool me, trying to figure out whether I'm listening. What can it predict?
Right. I mean, I think, the whole phone listening on the phone has happened to me as well. It's kind of super creepy. And that's all pre-ChatGPT too, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what kind of technology was used, pre-ChatGPT, pre-LLMs, right? Pre-transformers. But I think the systems, AI systems, are able to make a ton of sense with any given data. That much is clear, right? Like, it's just really, really good, right? So it just needs to get the data. It can, cook up stuff, right? Like, just like I mentioned about that poop fart thing with Notebook LM. I mean, that's like pretty stupendous, phenomenal. Being able to generate a whole show out of nothing, right? I mean, now that is impressive, right? So anyway, I mean, I think I think AI is just like new technologies, like fire or whatever, right? Like, I mean, people are going to use it in different ways, some good, some bad, right? Hopefully regulation will help, right? Because I mean, AI is going to be used by maybe by insurance companies, by healthcare providers, to weed out high risk cases, and probably AI. There's a decent, it's a decent hypothesis to say that AI will probably do a way better job than has ever been done by previous algorithms in the past, right? For these companies.
Well, not to loop us back to the beginning here, but I would say for the next show, maybe we should go look at the models that NVIDIA's Digits come with, right?
Uh-huh.
And we can do a deep dive on like what do they get for your $3,000? What do
Right.
you get a Linux, machine with an HDMI port and USB ports and everything you need to run a desktop. And they show in the image it as a desktop. But to your point, what models does it actually come pre-installed with, right? Like if you were to get one of these and go start to play with building out your own smart AI, what would that look like? What would you be doing there?
Right.
So we could actually to have a discussion on what does that come with? What are people going to be using this for? And if you're super geeky listening to this podcast and you care about AI, would it be, a little product review on would it be worth getting one of these things?
Right.
And then there's an availability timeline for this too, right? I don't think they're out yet.
No, I think it's coming up in May. So I was going to say that, by the time it comes out in May, it depends on what models are available at that time, right? In open source or other.
So what you're saying is what he was holding up was like a clay model, or like some fake board that's a pre-alpha. They probably didn't even have it.
Right? In my opinion, Eric, this is definitely a software play, less of a hardware play, more a software play, in the sense that I'm going to install some software, infrastructure on it, right? That'll enable me to mimic what I would do in the cloud, literally, on the desktop. Because honestly, today, right, everything we seem to do is on the quote unquote in the cloud. So this is a little bit of a departure from that. So, and it's going to be interesting. I think he's going to cater to a certain audience. But this might be a good way for him to take some market share for NVIDIA.
So I'm always looking for ways to get a new job, right? New gigs, whatever. We've got to stay current, right? So even though Mark Benioff from Salesforce has said that, no, we're not going to hire any new engineers. Do you think maybe he's exaggerating a little bit? Like when it comes to if I showed up going, hey, I know how the models work. I got my own G10, Blackwell CPU that I use at home to deploy the models and, fine tune them. And you got really good at that because you have, how many people actually get to play with a Blackwell CPU and, and run your models? Not that many, right? Like that's nobody has the money to go buy. And only that, but getting GPU resources on clouds right now is hard to do anyway, right? So so if you did that, you bought one of those and, you could put that on your resume. I bet that would help.
I think any of this, I think AI skills are definitely in demand right now, right? I think there's no doubt about it. So being able to geek out on something like this would certainly help your resume, I think,
So I think we say that we are, we got this podcast going, we do the Silicon Valley AI
Silicon Valley podcast.
We should be able to go to them and say we want an early access machine.
Oh, that's a good point. Right? That's a good point.
Get one of these guys shipped to us sometime in end of February.
End of February. That's a smart idea. Yeah.
We got to do that, right? And then if we do it, we can. Anybody that's listening to us, because we don't have that big audience, you can do it too, right? Like everybody can do it, right? We got everybody.
There's some free publicity. Not that NVIDIA needs it, but
no, they don't. But, I've heard that they have supply chain issues with Blackwell, right? Like that the CPU dies are so big that they're hard to get high quality, runs out of them. So there's a shortage of GPUs, as there has been, right? So it might not be easy to get these things regardless.
That's true. That's true. They're probably going to be pretty cagey about shipping out.
It's kind of like the Tesla Cybertruck. Right? Do you know you can only buy a Cybertruck, the $160,000 version? They don't sell the $80,000 version. Right? They market the 80. Oh, we're going to have an $80,000 version, but the only ones they've manufactured right now is the top end. Well, and why are they selling cheap ones? And so that's why I kind of come back to Blackwell. Like, yeah, they're going to make 15 G10s, right? They're making G200s or whatever it is, right? Like that's where the money is, right?
Yes.
And then one day they'll get around it. So I don't think the supply of the digits or whatever it's called is going to be that high, right? Like because they're gonna. They know where they make their money.
Yeah, I think NVIDIA is definitely trying to branch out. That much I can tell.
Now I remember I bought a 3090 GPU, which was pretty heavy GPU, right? And when it first came out, it was a beast, right? Those things cost $3,000 on its own. It's just a super heavy card, and it's got one of their latest. It was their latest before Blackwell showed up and all that. But and I got one of those, and we used it for mining, right? Because it would actually make I eventually paid for itself. Right, like I
Nice.
earned more than $3,000 for the Bitcoin mining that it
Oh,
did
you did
do
Bitcoin
during this.
mining?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Sure, why not? I took it to the office and I plugged it into the corporate power, and I just sat there and mined. I always IP spoofing, so nobody would know it was me. But
Interesting.
I'm just joking. I did it at home. But, so I don't think I made money because I think my power bill was like $300 a month extra because I had that thing running 24/7. Right? And eventually, I think I ended up with $3,000 worth of Bitcoin out of that one board. Right.
Interesting. Wow.
But if you count the power, it wasn't.
Was
but
not
anyway,
easy.
it's kind of fun to buy the latest.
Greatest. You were going to do the Optimus. What happened to that? Not Optimus.
I was going to do the bot. They're just not ready yet. They're just. They're not available. They're kind of like this digit thing that he's. They show the video and they show a YouTube video and they price it, but it was still going to cost $60,000 to $70,000 to have the full working model, and then they don't have them yet, right? So then people are selling them online, kind of like the Cyber. Oh, if you want to buy one from me, we got one, and they were flipping it on eBay for an extra $20,000. So if you really want to get one today or for Christmas, it was going to be $80,000 for a bot that, if you really looked at the software they had. Yeah, I looked at online people using the SDKs. There are Reddit's threads on people that do have the dogs and the other bots that Chinese manufacturer made. They were changing the SDK about every 3 weeks. The company was like breaking things, and it was just like people were like, yeah, my stuff doesn't compile anymore because they came out with a new SDK and it's like missing X, Y, and Z. And you're like, so they weren't API compatible from one release of the SDK to the next, which is just a young company, right? That's just very immature software development practices. This is a brand new market. So you realize your $80,000 is most likely going to be a doorstop.
Maybe you double that and buy a Cybertruck.
Well, not only that, but that's the going price of what the Tesla bot's supposed to be, right?
Maybe we rely talking about Musk. Maybe we rely on Musk more. Than the Chinese manufacturer.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, at least you get an SDK, it'll probably work. So,
but Tesla, I mean, Musk has to find time away from Doge and so on and so forth.
I'm sure he has CEOs and leadership of his companies that are just busy working. I'm sure they are. You don't dilly dally in the Bay Area, which I like about AI. I like AI forces us to work light, work hard. Even on your Saturday afternoons doing a podcast, right?
I think this is a lot of fun. I mean, AI has been amazing. Actually, I think the pace of development, I think, is not slowing down at all. So
I still struggle with what does it mean for the common man, right? Like, I get it for if you're an engineer, you want to do startups, you're looking for a good way to get on the AI bandwagon and get $1 billion then it's a good thing. I don't know what it means for a standard engineer who just wants, other than having your own, Blackwell system in your desk that you can play with, and well, what AI model would I build, and how would I learn, and what does it actually mean for me if I'm not interested in building a full-blown product for somebody? So not sure yet. What
if you're not interested in building a full-blown product, I think the whole software development process is definitely changing. I mean, what I'm seeing is that I mean, there's these AI models, and the fact that you have to train those models, etc., right, and fine-tune them, right. But then there's the application itself, right? Like if you're building a B2B SaaS application, there's a bunch of stuff that that you actually need to do in the application layer also. So there's a whole UI UX is changing. So if you're an engineer, it depends on how deep you want to go into all this. But really, I think there's a ton of change happening. So
I personally think there's going to be a boom in engineering 4 years from now. So I think we got overbloated on engineering back in the COVID days, where everybody was hiring engineers because everything was digital. And then they got fat and everybody got huge, and everybody Silicon Valley was paying everybody $500,000 a year. It was ridiculous how much they were paying for packages. And I know my son got a job at Facebook and they paid him a lot. He walked with a lot of money, and he was not worth it. He was just a Carnegie Mellon, brilliant guy, right? And knows AI, right? And he's, knows all the math and knows everything about it. It's just, like they were overpaid.
So yeah, so you're saying so 4 years from
So
now,
they overhired. Everybody's frozen now. Facebook, Google, Apple, everybody's kind of not hiring engineers, and then they're going to get behind the ball again.
right?
And all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh shoot,
Right,
we're going to need more engineers. Like
right.
they've peeled away
All the fat,
Yeah,
and
that's
after
right.
they put
And then
yeah,
they're
that's
going to be
interesting
like,
point.
oh, the next wave of something is going to come,
Right,
and it's not going to be all written by an AI, right? Like it might be help written by an AI, but
right,
you're still going to need guys dreaming up stuff.
right.
I do
right.
not think that AI is going to dream up the next idea to
yeah, probably not.
Sam's
Probably not.
Sam's. It's easy to copy.
Yes,
AI's copy,
Yes.
right? Yeah, AIs have still not learned how to innovate,
no.
right?
Yeah.
So
No, I think here the more imaginative capacity that a human brings to the table, I think the more sort of relevant they're going to be. I think in this AI age, right? The more templated something is, the more easier it is for the AI to copy. So
all right, well,
yeah, we are close to the top of the hour.
top of the hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, good to see you back again. And,
Same here, Eric.
Stay healthy, stay happy, and enjoy the holiday. The Martin Luther King Day is coming up in America, and so we're going to celebrate that. And we got the inauguration, and we might or might not celebrate that depending on your perspective. But we'll be back again next week, as always. You get your AI perspective week after week here as we watch everything play out.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Eric. Good chatting, and see you, everybody.